Thank you. Well, COP11 is the first COP after Nagoya, COP10, where the strategic plan for biodiversity and the Aichi targets were adopted. So this is the first COP that we're really looking at implementation of this strategic plan, and where implementation is really going to happen is mainly the national level. So we have a big emphasis at this COP on national level implementation issues.
Talking about the area where you work. Help us understand how it relates with the NBS app, which has been heavily discussed, and we're all looking forward to the implementation of the action plan.
Great. So I work for the UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Center, which is the biodiversity information and assessment arm of UNEP. And so UNEP WCMC is helping countries to set their targets and to use indicators to track the achievements of those targets. But we're also very concerned with using evidence and information to convince decision makers in other sectors that biodiversity is important. So we are doing a lot of work on the mainstreaming of biodiversity into other sectors, particularly development, which is my area, working on the mainstreaming of biodiversity with development and with poverty reduction. So we see that the NBSAPs, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plans, are a really important vehicle to provide a policy platform to merge these issues and to get all different sectors interested in and invested in biodiversity.
Right. So when you talk about mainstreaming the issue of biodiversity conservation, it's extremely critical to identify the stakeholders. Do we look at the private sector players as important stakeholders who can be feasibly incorporated in the process of or implementation of the action plan?
Absolutely. I think private sector is a very important partner. We think globally there's a lot of multinational companies that are becoming more and more interested in biodiversity issues, but at the national level, the private sector in many different sectors, so agriculture, finance, across the board, they should be engaged in developing the NBSAP, and they're part of the team to ensure it's implemented.
Right. Let's say in developing countries like India, where economic activities like mining faces a lot of challenge in terms of livelihood issues, protests by NGOs in local communities, but at the same time, these economic activities have to take place. What does the NBSAP action plan do to address such issues, which is typical to countries like India?
Yes, well, mining and the extractive sector more generally is obviously presents a threat to biodiversity, but as you mentioned, these are activities that are going to continue. So we do need to work with the extractive sector, and UNEP WCMC hosts a partnership called the Proteus Partnership, where we identify biodiversity and protected areas data and help the extractive sectors use that in their risk assessments. So we think that this is part of the due diligence that companies should be carrying out as part of their license to operate. So I think the NBSAP process is important to understand what are the different sectors that are impacting biodiversity, and making sure that the appropriate legislation is in place. And I think there's other initiatives that are looking at the legal and participatory aspects of NBSAPs, which we think are very important as well.
Right.